November 2023. WeWork files for bankruptcy with liabilities exceeding $10 billion. 4 years earlier, this company was worth $47 billion on paper. SoftBank had poured in over $10 billion. Adam Neumann, the charismatic founder, walked away with $1.7 billion, while thousands of employees lost their jobs and their equity evaporated. The question isn't just how WeWork collapsed, it's how a company that rented office space convinced the world it was a tech revolution. How did beautiful lobbies, free beer, and talk of elevating consciousness mask a business model that was structurally broken from day one? By the end, you'll understand how narrative overtook math and why COVID didn't kill WeWork. It just exposed what was already dying. Adam Neumann grew up on a kibbutz in Israel, where collective living shaped his worldview. He moved to New York in 2001 after serving in the Israeli Navy and enrolled at Baruch College to study business. He struggled with dyslexia but had natural charisma. His early ventures failed: baby clothes with knee pads called crawlers, a women's shoe concept that never launched. He was searching for something bigger. In 2008, he met architect Miguel McKelvey. McKelvey had grown up in a commune in Oregon and shared Newman's vision of community-driven spaces. Together, they launched Green Desk, an eco-friendly co-working space in Brooklyn. The business worked, but it was small. They sold it 2 years later and used the money to start WeWork in 2010. The first location opened in Soho, Manhattan, in April 2011. Real estate developer Joel Schreiber bought a 33% stake for $15 million, giving the company early credibility. WeWork looked like any other shared office provider at first, but Neumann had a different pitch. This wasn't just about desks and conference rooms. It was about community, belonging, a movement to elevate the world's consciousness. He spoke about creating a world where people work to make a life, not just a living. The language was aspirational, almost spiritual. PepsiCo placed advisors in the Soho location, turning it into a startup incubator. By 2013, WeWork housed 350 startups, including names like Fitocracy and Hack Hands. The spaces had a distinct aesthetic: industrial chic with exposed brick, communal tables, and beer on tap. Members weren't tenants. They were part of a movement. The company started calling itself a tech platform, claiming it used data analytics and smart technology to optimize space. WeWork said it could predict where to build next, how to design layouts, and what amenities members wanted. That rebranding was the trick. Investors stopped seeing a landlord and started seeing the next big thing. By 2014, WeWork was the fastest growing lessee of office space in New York. Venture capital firm Benchmark led a Series A round in 2012, giving WeWork the tech startup stamp of approval. In 2017, Masayoshi Son, CEO of SoftBank, met Neumann for 12 minutes and decided to invest $4.4 billion. Son had made one of history's greatest bets when he gave Jack Ma $20 million to build Alibaba. He saw Neumann as another visionary. Son told Neumann he needed to think bigger. The investment pushed WeWork's valuation to $20 billion. Over time, SoftBank would invest more than $10 billion total, making WeWork one of the Vision Fund's largest bets. Neumann didn't stop at offices. He launched We Live, a co-living venture with furnished apartments in New York and Crystal City, Virginia. He opened We Grow, a private school run by his wife Rebecca, cousin of Gwyneth Paltrow, with tuition over $40,000 a year. The school promised to teach children how to be entrepreneurs and adapt to a rapidly changing world. WeWork acquired Flatiron School, a coding boot camp, for an undisclosed sum. It bought Meetup, the social network for organizing groups, for $156 million. It even invested in WaveGarden, a company that made artificial wave pools for surfing. The acquisitions made no coherent sense. They were expensive distractions from the core business. But Neumann was building an empire, and empires don't stop at one product line. By January 2019, SoftBank's total investment exceeded $10 billion. WeWork's valuation hit $47 billion. Neumann was untouchable. The company had 847 locations across 123 cities. It was central London's biggest office occupier and Manhattan's largest private tenant. By 2016, WeWork had about 80,000 members. The growth was staggering. But the entire empire rested on a question no one wanted to ask. What happens when you call a landlord a tech company? WeWork signed 10 to 15-year leases with building owners, fixed long-term obligations. Then it subleased space, month to month, to startups and freelancers. Short-term, flexible revenue. This is called a duration mismatch. When occupancy was high and property values rising, the model worked. But the math only held if nothing went wrong. And in business, something always goes wrong. The company was built on leverage and optimism. If a recession hit, if occupancy dropped, if companies stopped needing flexible office space, WeWork would still owe billions in rent with no way to pay. The business model wasn't revolutionary. It was a bet that good times would last forever. In August 2019, WeWork filed its S-1 document to go public. The IPO was supposed to be the victory lap. Instead, it became an autopsy. The filing revealed that WeWork had $47 billion in future lease obligations, but only $4 billion in commitments from tenants. The gap was staggering. The company was losing over $5,000 per new customer. In 2018 alone, it burned through more than $2 billion. Revenue was growing, but losses were growing faster. The governance structure was worse. Newman controlled the company through dual-class shares that gave him 20 votes per share, while other shareholders had one. He owned buildings that WeWork leased, creating conflicts of interest. He had sold $700 million worth of his own stock while the company bled cash. He bought the trademark to We and sold it back to the company for $5.9 million. When the backlash hit, he returned the money, but the damage was done. Investors saw other red flags. WeWork had changed its legal name to the We Company and talked about its mission to elevate the world's consciousness. The S1 mentioned community-adjusted EBITDA, a made-up metric that excluded basic costs like marketing and overhead. It was financial engineering designed to hide the truth. Analysts called it one of the worst IPO filings they'd ever seen. The media tore into Newman's lifestyle, private jets, tequila shots during interviews, walking around barefoot in the office, a $60 million Gulfstream that employees said symbolized everything wrong with the company's priorities. Stories surfaced about wild company retreats where cases of $110 tequila appeared at dawn. One meeting in 2016 where Newman fired 7% of the staff ended with trays of shots and a performance by Run DMC. Employees stood around, some dancing, others stunned. Reports emerged that Newman had tried to bring cannabis on a private jet to Israel, where it was illegal. The flight crew discovered a stash in a cereal box and immediately flew back, leaving Newman stranded. Former employees described a culture where Newman's whims became company policy. He once banned meat at company events for environmental reasons, then was later seen eating meat himself. He had a private meditation room in his office and a photoshopped image of himself surfing on the wall. Investors who had been willing to believe the vision now saw the numbers. WeWork's expected valuation collapsed from $47 billion to $20 billion, then to $10 billion. On September 17, 2019, the company withdrew its IPO. A week later, under pressure from SoftBank, Newman resigned as CEO. He negotiated an exit package worth up to $1.7 billion, $970 million for his shares, a $185 million consulting fee, and a $500 million loan payoff from JP Morgan. Two co-CEOs took over. WeWork laid off 2,400 employees, nearly 20% of its workforce. SoftBank wrote down $9.2 billion on its investment, roughly 90% of what it had put in. Masayoshi Son's reputation as a visionary took a hit. He'd bet big on another charismatic founder and lost. Then COVID-19 arrived in early 2020. The pandemic didn't just hurt WeWork, it exposed the fatal flaw in the business model. When offices emptied and remote work became the norm, occupancy rates plummeted. Companies that had flexible memberships stopped paying. WeWork still owed rent on those 10 to 15-year leases. Revenue collapsed, but the fixed costs remained. The company that had promised flexibility was trapped by its own commitments. WeWork began closing locations and negotiating with landlords. In 2020, it vacated 66 locations and renegotiated terms at more than 150 others. It laid off employees in multiple rounds, 250 in March, more in April. The company was hemorrhaging cash with no clear path to profitability. In 2021, WeWork went public through a SPAC merger at a drastically reduced valuation of about $9 billion. The stock traded poorly from day one. Losses continued. By mid-2023, the company had more than 700 locations in 39 countries, but was spending over 80% of its revenue on rent and interest. It owed more than $2.7 billion a year just to keep the lights on. Debt carried interest rates as high as 15%. The company tried to restructure debt, exchanging old obligations for new ones with longer maturities, but it was only buying time. On November 6, 2023, WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New Jersey, listing liabilities between $10 billion and $50 billion. The filing covered US and Canadian operations but excluded international locations and franchises. Days before the filing, SoftBank paid $1.5 billion to lenders, including Goldman Sachs, because it had guaranteed WeWork's loans. SoftBank's total losses on WeWork exceeded $14 billion. The bankruptcy revealed what should have been obvious from the start. The math never worked. WeWork wasn't a victim of bad timing. It was a company built on a flawed premise that cheap money and hype had kept alive far longer than fundamentals justified. In 2024, a bankruptcy judge approved WeWork's restructuring plan. The company eliminated $4 billion in debt and reduced future rent obligations by more than $12 billion. It terminated or renegotiated leases at roughly 160 of its 450 locations, focusing on the most expensive and least profitable spaces. Yardi Systems, a real estate technology firm and creditor, acquired a 60% stake for $337 million. Hedge funds took another 20%. SoftBank's ownership dropped to about 20%, a fraction of what it once controlled. A new CEO, John Santora, formerly of Cushman & Wakefield, took over in June 2024. What remains is a shadow. Around 337 locations globally, down from the peak of 847. In the fourth quarter of 2024, WeWork reported its first break-even EBITDA, a milestone the company celebrated as proof it could survive. But break-even EBITDA isn't profit. The company was still cash flow negative, spending money to upgrade locations and stabilize operations. It's no longer trying to elevate consciousness. It's trying to survive as a conventional office provider in a market where remote work has permanently reduced demand. Adam Neumann didn't disappear. He launched Flow, a residential real estate venture focused on co-living and apartment management, and raised hundreds of millions from investors, including Andreessen Horowitz. He pursued international projects, including ventures in Saudi Arabia. During WeWork's bankruptcy, he made a bid to buy the company back for $500 million. The bid was rejected. Creditors preferred their own restructuring plan. Neumann walked away once with $1.7 billion. The employees who believed in the mission got nothing. Their equity was wiped out. Many lost their jobs. The core lesson is about the difference between narrative and fundamentals. Calling office subleasing tech didn't change the unit economics. Every new customer lost the company $5,000. You can't scale negative unit economics into a sustainable business, no matter how good the story sounds. Beautiful spaces and free beer don't fix broken math. Growth without profitability is just a race to see who runs out of money first. The governance failures amplified the disaster. Dual-class shares gave Neumann unchecked control even as the company spiraled. Related party deals let him profit personally while the company struggled. The cult of personality around the founder allowed reckless expansion on fundamentally flawed assumptions. Investors chased vision over cash flow, enabled by an era of cheap money and massive venture funds that mispriced risk. SoftBank's $100 billion vision fund had so much capital it couldn't deploy it carefully. Speed mattered more than diligence. WeWork also shows what happens when external shocks hit fragile business models. The pandemic didn't kill WeWork. It revealed that the company was already dying. A recession would have done the same. When occupancy drops and property values fall, long-term lease obligations become a death sentence. WeWork's model required constant growth and high occupancy. It had no cushion for a downturn. The flexibility it sold to customers was an illusion. The company itself had no flexibility at all. The question for today's investors is simple. Which of the current disruptors are actually just traditional businesses wearing tech company costumes? WeWork's collapse was a case study in what happens when narrative overtakes substance. The company didn't fail because of bad luck. It failed because the business model was broken from the start, and no amount of charisma, capital, or hype could fix it. The real warning isn't about avoiding risk. It's about understanding the difference between a company that's unprofitable because it's investing in growth and a company that's unprofitable because the unit economics don't work. WeWork was the latter. Every dollar of revenue cost more than $1 to generate. That's not a tech company. That's not even a good business. It's a story that ran out of believers. If you want more stories about what happens when vision collides with reality, subscribe.